On a cold December night during the pandemic of 2020, British police officers opened the back of a lorry at Dover and discovered 9 men hidden among the trailer's official consignment. The lorry was not on the way into the UK, it was on the way out, booked on a Calais-bound ferry due to leave hours later with its human cargo. The men had been placed in the trailer by a criminal gang that investigators believe exploited border controls to smuggle people out of the country on an unprecedented scale. Its ringleader was Mohammed Moktar Hossain, a Bangladeshi café owner living in London. He had a taste for expensive cars and sent at least one child to a £12,000 a year private school. Hossain essentially acted as an illegal travel agent, arranging for hundreds of people to be shipped in and out of Britain, earning him a fortune in the process. You are watching OCG TV. Every year, people smugglers are responsible for thousands of attempts to enter the UK illegally, in boats, by air or by road. There are many reasons why people choose to come to the UK, but almost all are being exploited by organised criminals. These gangs are happy to risk the safety and security of those they transport for profit. One such network came onto the NCA's radar in September 2020. This operation, which was codenamed Symbolry, began with an intelligence report. NCA officers began investigating taxi drivers from East London who were regularly leaving the capital, often late at night, to rendezvous with lorries across the southeast and dropping off migrants or people wanted by police for onward travel out of Britain. In London there was plenty of cover, as there were considerable people around. But once the couriers were driving around the Kent area, they were easier to spot. Sitting behind their computer screen in the early hours of the morning, NCA operatives would try to piece together the migrants' movements, a complex game of nocturnal cat and mouse. It was late 2020. The UK was slowly emerging from COVID, but some lockdown restrictions were still in place. This meant that any road users were either emergency services, essential road users, or in some cases, criminals. What made this people trafficking investigation different to other operations was that the gang wasn't just involved in exploiting migrants. They were smuggling them out too, offering an escape route for those that needed to flee the UK and evade justice. These were people that were wanted for murder, people who were wanted for child sexual exploitation, or people that were subject to deportation orders. Typically, if an individual has been approved for deportation, they will get sent back to a country that they may not want to get sent back to. For some, the solution is to flee to France, who won't necessarily have the same extradition agreements as the UK. The gang was using predominantly Romanian drivers to take migrants down the coast. Each time a lorry was pulled over, the NCA needed to make arrests, process the migrants, and collect evidence. And a key part of that work was the seizure of mobile phones. Early in the investigation, the work by the NCA identified one common number that kept appearing on the migrants' phones. That number belonged to Mohammed Moktar Hossain, a Bangladeshi cafe owner living in London. There was a second number that kept cropping up, which didn't take long to identify. A man named Noor Ullah, who was Hossain's trusted lieutenant. He lived in the Woodford Green area in a very nicely furnished semi-detached property, several high-value cars, children at private schools, and ran a restaurant in Whitechapel. It soon became clear that Hossain was running a well-organised operation, and that included keeping up-to-date records on the migrants who were using his services. He had people refer work to him, and they would get a cut for doing so. Their operation ran in 2 stages. The migrants would be told to congregate in a certain location and minicabs from various parts of London. They would then make their way to a rendezvous point and then would be transferred from the minicab into a lorry. The gang had their preferred hotspots, primarily in East London. 5 or 6 people would be spotted hanging around in the streets with suitcases containing all their belongings, waiting for collection by one of Hossain's couriers to pick them up and bring them along the pre-planned route. The relentless nature, because of what the group were doing, had to happen out of hours, which means it would go on till about 4 in the morning every day. Exhausting work for investigators. Police were dealing with 2 or 3 movements a week for around 6-month period, using overt police stops on the minicabs before they reached the lorries to prevent boarding. Slowly, the NCA began to dismantle Hossain's operation, removing the people he relied on most. Before long, 6 of his trusted lorry drivers were arrested and jailed, having pled guilty at the earliest opportunity. Without a network of Romanian truckers and London taxi drivers, Hossain had to come up with other methods to move migrants down the coast. He soon moved on to breaking into lorries of unsuspecting drivers and usher on his clientele. His new method became apparent to detectives one evening at South Mims Services, just off the M25, when one group of migrants gained access to a lorry parked up for the evening. Unbeknown to them, another group of migrants were already inside, waiting for the lorry to begin their route across the border. Neither groups could agree who would stay and who would go, resulting in a fight that woke the driver, who alerted police. The operation had been underway for almost 9 months. In May 2021, the NCA finally made the decision that it was time to arrest Hossain and all those involved in his network, including associates Noor Ula and Waqas Ikram, a huge operation that meant that officers had to be on standby at several locations across London. When Hossain, a creature of habit, left his house at 4 a.m, police were in wait nearby. They put a hard stop in and arrested him there and then. It was important to catch him off guard and find him with as much evidence as possible. The plan was successful, and they found several mobile phones, which led to a treasure trove of information and an intriguing insight into such an operation. Hossain had informed customers that there would be no refunds if they changed their mind. If his gang failed to deliver on their promises, clients would be refunded £500. Clients were instructed to have £300 in cash on their person and to leave mobiles at home, 2 rules that were often ignored. Another area of focus for the police was where Hossain stashed his illegitimate profits. He laundered his earnings through a network of sham companies designed to obscure the origins of his wealth. However, he was by no means skilled in this area, and it didn't take long for investigators to untangle his criminal profits from the legitimate economy. He started up a business called On Time UK International, which he claimed was a student letting business. Upon further scrutiny, it had not done a single legitimate transaction or piece of business in the 4 years it was operating. He claimed on his account opening documentation that he was a middleman between universities and students, and that he had a relationship with certain universities, which was quickly disproved in court. However, even his forensic accountant couldn't find a single transaction that linked back to legitimate trading. And then there was the café right on the edge of the City of London. He and his wife bought a souk café in Whitechapel, which was genuinely used as a café premises. It did a small amount of trading, but Hossain was putting between £14,000 and £20,000 through it every month. He was also careless when it came to paying his daughter's school fees. He had hijacked his clients' bank accounts that were leaving the UK and had used that money to pay for private schooling. It was a series of careless mistakes which made it easy pickings for police when building a case against him. On the morning of May 19, 2021, more than 130 NCA officers simultaneously raided a series of addresses. Hossain was arrested yards from his £580,000 4-bedroom home in Woodford Green, northeast London, as he returned from the school drop-off in his Mercedes. Investigators discovered 18 unregistered mobile phones and SIM cards at the property, which he claimed the devices had been accidentally left by customers at his cafe. Officers also recovered several handwritten ledgers which listed clients' details and requirements. Hossain has claimed the ledgers belonged to someone else, but they indicated that these smuggling activities date back to at least 2018. At the same time, the NCA swooped on Hossain. They raided the home in Leytonstone, East London, of Noor Ula, an alleged lieutenant in the gang. An ex-council flat in Whitechapel was also searched. Officers found 11 migrants in the rundown property, which had bunk beds for at least 19 people. According to one witness statement, Hossain charged clients £20 a night to stay there. During his trial, he said that he was an honest, legitimate businessman up until 2 months before he was arrested. He claimed his childhood friend was in fact the one who owned the operation, and he was merely covering while he was on holiday. Despite the evidence stacked against him, including the ledgers and mobile phone data, Mohammed Moktar Hossain refused to go quietly, leading to yet more work for the NCA and the Operation Symbolry team. From the outset, he deployed tactics to delay and complicated proceedings. He dismissed numerous lawyers, casting doubt on his commitment to a consistent legal strategy. Eventually, Hossain pleaded guilty but attempted to minimize his role in the criminal activities by presenting a basis for his plea. His version of events, however, was refuted by the prosecution. This dispute over the facts led to a Newton hearing, a unique legal proceeding in English law. In such cases, a defendant pleads guilty but contests certain factual elements, leaving the judge, not a jury, to decide the disputed issues and determine sentencing. During the hearing, the defense introduced expert witnesses focusing on telecommunication and cell site analysis to challenge the prosecution's narrative. Despite these efforts, Hossain was ultimately sentenced to 10.5 years in prison. Throughout the trial and subsequent proceedings, Hossain attempted to manipulate the system and negotiate his sentence. Remarkably, he tried to bargain directly with the judge, suggesting an 8-year prison term. The judge, however, firmly reminded him that sentencing doesn't work that way. During the Newton hearing, Hossain again sought clarity on potential sentencing outcomes, offering to accept a 9.5-year sentence. The judge explained that this reduced term was contingent on not hearing further evidence. Hossain declined the offer at the time. After a day of evidence being presented, he reversed his stance and asking if the 9.5 years was still available. The judge denied his request, emphasizing that the opportunity had been conditional and no longer applied. Hossain's repeated attempts to manipulate the process failed to sway the outcome. On Friday, June 23, 2023, Hossain was jailed for 10.5 years at Snaresbrook Crown Court. Ullah initially denied the charges against him, but on the first day of his trial, he pleaded guilty to conspiring to smuggle people out of the UK between September 2020 and May 2021. He was sentenced to 2 years and 5 months in prison. The smugglers will regret their actions now in jail due to harsh conditions, lost freedom, and the weight of their crimes. Confronting the pain they caused innocent victims, exploiting lives, dangerous journeys, they face guilt and societal condemnation. Time in prison may bring reflection, but regret cannot erase the harm done. Thanks for watching. Until next time.